King Ʒrsvapati is descending into the depths of the night. And this is not only a night that intervenes between one day and another. This is the night of evil and falsehood and suffering. So I'm going to read on page 205 from the break. As from a womb obscure, he saw emerge the body and visage of a dark, unseen, hidden behind the fair outsides of life. Its dangerous commerce is our suffering's cause. Its breath is a subtle poison in men's hearts. All evil starts from that ambiguous face. A peril haunted now the common air. The world grew full of menacing energies, and wherever turned for help or hope his eyes, in field and house, in street and camp and mart, he met the prowl and stealthy come and go of armed, disquieting, bodied influences. A march of goddess figures, dark and nude, alarmed the air with grandiose unease. Appalling footsteps drew invisibly near. Shapes that were threats invaded the dream light, and ominous beings passed him on the road, whose very gaze was a calamity. A charm and sweetness, sudden and formidable, faces that raised alluring lips and eyes approached him, armed with beauty like a snare, but hid a fatal meaning in each line, and could in a moment dangerously change. But he alone discerned that screened attack. A veil upon the inner vision lay. A force was there that hid its dreadful steps. All was belied, yet thought itself the truth. All were beset, but knew not of the siege, for none could see the authors of their fall. Aware of some dark wisdom still withheld, that was the seal and warrant of this strength, he followed the track of dim, tremendous steps, returning to the night from which they came. A tract he reached, unbuilt and owned by none. There all could enter, but none stay for long. It was a no man's land of evil air, a crowded neighborhood without one home, a borderland between the world and hell. There, unreality was nature's lord. It was a space where nothing could be true, for nothing was what it had claimed to be. A high appearance wrapped a specious void, yet nothing would confess its own pretense, even to itself, in the ambiguous heart. A vast deception was the law of things. Only by that deception they could live. An unsubstantial nihil guaranteed the falsehood of the forms this nature took, and made them seem a while to be and live. A borrowed magic drew them from the void. They took a shape and stuff that was not theirs, and showed a color that they could not keep. Mirrors to a phantasm of reality, each rainbow brilliance was a splendid lie, a beauty unreal graced a glamour face. Nothing could be relied on to remain. Joy nurtured tears, and good and evil proved. But never out of evil one plucked good. Love ended early in hate, delight killed with pain, truth into falsity grew, and death ruled life. A power that laughed at the mischiefs of the world, an irony that joined the world's contraries and flung them into each other's arms to strive, put a sardonic rictus on God's face. You'd like to start, Tanika?
Okay. As 𝒉𝒂𝒂𝒒 𝒍𝒊𝒅𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂, the body and visage of a darkened scene, hidden beyond the fairer sides of life. Its dangerous commerce is our suffering's cause. Its breeze is a subtle poison in men's hearts. All evil starts from that ambiguous face.
Yes. So he's seeing something emerging, coming out, as if it's being born from a womb of darkness. He sees emerge a body, the body, and the visage, the face of a dark, unseen, capital U. This is an unseen presence, power or being, which is hidden behind the fair outsides of life. We can look around at life and see that it looks quite pleasant and okay and beautiful. But hidden behind it is this dark, unseen presence. Its dangerous commerce, its interactions are the cause of our suffering. Its breath, that unseen presence, is breathing poison, a subtle poison in men's hearts. And Sri Aurobindo tells us that all evil, all wrong, starts from that ambiguous face, that face of that unseen being. If we would see, he sees its body and its visage, and he realizes that everything evil starts from that face, which is ambiguous. We can't read it clearly what it means. Kamala.
A parallel, hunted, now the common air. The world grew full of menacing energies, and wherever turned for help, ahold his eyes. In field and house, in street and camp unmarked, he met the proud and steady, come and go, of armed, disquieting, bodied influence. A march of goddess figures, dark and mute, alarmed the hair with grandiose unease. Appalling footsteps grew invisibly near, shapes that were threads embedded the green light, and ominous beings passed him on the road, whose very gaze was a calamity.
Let's pause there. So Aswapati feels this sense of danger, a peril, haunted now. The common air, just the ordinary air that we breathe, seemed to be full of the threat of great danger. He feels the world growing full of menacing energies, threatening energies. And wherever he looks for help or hope, whether it's in the fields or in houses, in the street, in the camps where perhaps soldiers or police are, and marked in marketplaces, everywhere he sees the stealthy come and go. There are secretly beings are coming and going and prowling around, prowling like a tiger looking for its prey, hunting. The prowl and stealthy come and go of armed, disquieting, bodied influences. These are influences and presences, but they've put on forms. And they are armed. They have dangerous weapons. And they are prowling around, So that makes the whole atmosphere full of danger. There have been times and places in human history that were like this. Perhaps in previous lives we have experienced those times and places. And so we recognize this description that he's giving of this sense of danger everywhere, wherever you go. And these armed, disquieting, bodied influences, they include goddess figures, superhuman figures, but they are dark and they are nude, they're exposed, marching. So the fact that they are there, marching around, alarmed the air, the whole atmosphere, with grandiose unease. An uneasy feeling is there on a very large scale, grandiose. These footsteps draw near, but the very sound of those footsteps causes terror, appalling footsteps. They're coming, we can't see whose feet they are. They're coming invisibly, but they're coming nearer. And then there are shapes that we can see, shapes that were threats. Just the very forms are threatening. They come into this dream light of that realm. And ominous beings. The beings have a threatening appearance. They passed him on the road, whose very gaze was a calamity. If they turn their head and look at you, you feel just that look is a disaster in itself. Suresh.
The charm and sweetness, sudden and vulnerable face, the grace, hovering lips and eyes, approach him armed with beauty like a snare, but hid their fatal meanings in each line, and could in a moment dangerously change. But in alarm,
discerned
that screamed at her. A wave upon the inner prison way. A force was there that hid its dreadful steps. All was
belied,
and thought itself the truth. All were beset, but knew not of the
siege.
Force none could see the authors of the fall.
Yes. So there are these dark, menacing figures, but also other kinds of figures. A charm and sweetness suddenly appears. It's so charming, it's so powerful, formidable. And he's approached, King Āsvapati is approached by beautiful faces that raised alluring lips and eyes. They look so attractive, no? They approached him, but their beauty is like a snare, like a trap. There, that beauty hid a fatal meaning, a disastrous meaning in each line. And that beauty could, in a moment, dangerously change. It looks so beautiful and attractive, but it can change into something terrible and dangerous. So all the beings there are threatened, but he alone, only King Ʒrsvaپati, could discern, could see that screened attack, that attack which is coming under some kind of disguise or hiding. For the other beings, there's a veil over the inner vision. A force was there that hid its dreadful steps. Nobody could see what is coming. And everything that is seen was belied. It is false. It is contradicted. And yet, it's quite confident. It thought itself the truth. All the beings were beset, in danger of attack. But they didn't know that they're being surrounded by these dangerous influences, because nobody could see who is responsible for their fall, for whatever dreadful thing happens to them. Alexander.
Aware of some dark wisdom still withheld, that was the seal and warrant of this strength. He followed the track of dim, tremendous steps, returning to the night from which they came. A tract he reached unbuilt and owned by none. There all could enter, but now stay for long. It was a no-man's land of evil air, a crowded neighborhood without one home, a borderland between the world and hell. There, unreality was nature's lord. It was a space where nothing could be true, for nothing was what it had claimed to be. A high appearance, wrapped a species void.
Thank you. So Ʒrsvaپati is aware that all this exists because it is sanctioned by some dark wisdom. He doesn't know what that wisdom is. Its secret is still held back. But that dark wisdom is allowing all this. It has put its seal and said, yes, this is its warrant. It's given the permission for this realm to exist. And he wants to find out what is that seal and warrant. So he follows the track of dim, tremendous steps. He sees these footsteps in the mud, as it were, and they're going in a certain direction towards the night, returning to the night from which they came. So he reaches a space, an area. There are no buildings. Nobody owns that place. He says everybody could enter there, there's nothing to stop them, but nobody stays there very long. This is a no man's land. A no man's land is usually a strip or a space between warring countries. And this is the space between them that doesn't belong to anybody, a disputed territory. That no man's land of evil air. It's crowded, a crowded neighborhood, but there's no home there, no safe place. It's a borderland between the world and hell. There, unreality is the lord of nature. It's a space where nothing could be true. Nothing there was what it had claimed to be. They put on false appearances. I'm this or I'm that. These high appearances are just wrapping up a deceptive emptiness, something that's specious, gives a wrong impression. Alice, would you read?
That nothing would confess its own pretense, even to itself, in the ambiguous heart. A vast deception was the law of things. Only on that deception they could live. And unsubstantial, nihil, guarantee the falsehood of the forms this nature took, and made them seem allowed to be and live. A borrowed magic drew them from glory. They took shape and stuff that was not theirs, and showed a color that they could not keep. Mirrors to a phantasm of reality.
Thank you. So there are these high appearances. Nothing admits that it's just a pretense, unreal. No? Not even to them itself or themselves, inwardly. They won't admit that. A vast deception was the law of things in that realm. And the things there, the beings there could only live by that deception. An unsubstantial nihil. Nihil is a nothingness. Is somehow guaranteeing, putting the sign on these forms, saying, yes, yes, they are real, although they are false forms. The falsehood of the forms this nature took. It's sometimes somehow guaranteed, but guaranteed by nothing. It just allows them to appear to exist and live for a short time. And these forms and beings have been drawn out of the emptiness by a borrowed magic. It doesn't even belong to them. With that borrowed magic, they put on a shape and use substance that doesn't belong to them. And they show a color, but they can't keep that color. It's just a falsehood. All these forms are just mirrors to a phantasm, a ghostly appearance of reality. Ganga Lakshmi.
Each one, both villains, was a swan
Lie.
beauty unreal, grassy clement face. Nothing could be relied on to remain. Joy, where foreign tears and gone and every good, but never out of having one record good. Lord, indeed, early in age, delight killed with pain. True into falsity, woe and death rule life. The powers that laugh at the mischiefs of the world, and ironies that join the world's contraries. They plug them into each other, arms to strike, with the sardonic rectus of God's face. Aloof, its influence entered everywhere, and left the cloud mark on the breath, the twisted heart and the strange soul smile, mocked at the sinister comedy of life.
Yes, terrible. Each rainbow brilliance, lovely illusory colors, is a splendid lie, a beauty unreal, graced glamour face. It's just an appearance which will soon disappear. Nothing could be relied on to remain. If there's some joy for a moment, it's just feeding tears. It's going to lead to sorrow. Things that seem to be good turn out to be evil. But the opposite never happens. Never out of evil one plucked good. Love ended early in hate. Delight killed with pain. Truth grew into falsehood. And death ruled life. And this is all because of the rule of a power that laughed at the mischiefs of the world. That's how it's amusing itself. An irony. Irony is a kind of humor from contradictions. An irony that joined the world's contraries and brings them together to struggle and wrestle against each other. So this kind of humor of contraries put a sardonic rictus on God's face. A rictus is a kind of spasm of the nerves of the face that make the person look as if they are smiling or laughing, but they are not really. So it looks like a sardonic smile, a mocking, mean sort of smile. So Mother has drawn this face, this terrible face. I have put it out there. And in the agenda we read about the experience that she had when she was reading these lines, and led her to the conclusion that falsehood is the sorrow of the Lord, so that even on the Lord's beautiful face this terrible sorrow can appear. Yeah, so that presence is keeping at a distance, but its influence enters everywhere. And wherever it enters, it leaves its mark. And its mark is the mark, the footprint of the devil, a cloven hoof mark. The devil is supposed to have feet like a goat. So the goats, they have these hooves, these little horny hooves on their feet that is split in two, cloven. It means that it's has a double mark. The cloven hoof mark, it's the mark of the devil. So what is happening here, where is this 𝒅𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂 coming from? A twisted heart and a strange, somber smile, a dark, this sardonic smile, which is not a real smile. A grimace is mocking at the sinister comedy of life, a kind of comedy that is threatening, very unpleasant. Yes, please, go ahead.
And I see the dwelling of appearance form, and ominous dread softened its direct control, that none might understand or read and write. None heard until a dreadful grasp was close, or else all averred the divine approach, and air of prophecy fell, a heavenly hope. Listen for a gospel, watched for a new star. The friend was visible, but clothed in light. He seemed a helping angel from the skies. He armed untruth with scripture and the law. He deceived with wisdom, with virtue soothed the soul, and led to perdition by the handward path. A lavish sense he gave of power and joy, and when arose the warning from within, he reassured the ear with dulcet tones, or took the mind captive in its own net. His rigorous logic made the false seem true. Amazing to be left with Holy Lord, he spoke as with the very voice of God.
Thank you. So there are these threatening footsteps, no? Now this ominous tread seems to be announcing the advent of a perilous form, a very, very dangerous form. But it softens its terrible footfall so that nobody can understand. Nobody can be on guard. They can't defend themselves or be careful because nobody heard that dreadful footstep until a dreadful grasp was close. Or else everything seems to give signals of a divine approach, that something wonderful is coming. An air of prophecy is felt, a heavenly hope. So everybody's listening for a gospel, a new divine message, watching for a new star that's showing the coming of the Messiah. The fiend, the devil, is visible, but he's all wrapped up in light, so that he seems like a helping angel from the skies. That fiend, that devil, gives weapons to falsehood, using the scripture and the law, the holy law. He twists everything, he deceives with wisdom, destroys the soul with virtue, with good behavior. He leads the beings to perdition, to damnation, but he leads them by a heavenward path. He gives them a lavish sense, a generous sense of power and joy. And when some warning comes up from their souls within, he whispers in their ear. He reassured the ear with dulcet tones, sweet arguments. He takes the mind captive in its own net, catches it with its own thoughts. He uses a rigorous logic to make the false seem true. He confuses the chosen children of God with holy law. He speaks of the scriptures. He spoke as with the very voice of God, but he's deceiving them. Will you read? Yes.
The air was full of treachery and ruse. Truth-speaking was a stratagem in that place. Ambush lurked in a smile and peril made. Safety its cover, trust its entrance gate. Falsehood came, laughing with the eyes of truth. Each friend might turn an enemy or spy. The hand one clasp, ensleeved a dagger's stab, and an embrace could be doom's iron cage. Agony and danger stalked their trembling ray, and softly spoke as to a timid friend. Attacks sprang suddenly, vehement and unseen. Fear leaped upon the heart at every turn, and cried out with an anguished, dreadful voice. It called for one to save, but none came near. All warily walked, for death was ever close. Yet caution seemed a vain expense of care. All that guarded proved a deadly net. And when after a long suspense salvation came, and brought a glad relief, disarming strength, it served as a smiling passage to worse fate.
Thank you. So it's a real nightmare, isn't it? The air is full of trickery, ruse, and treachery. Your friends betray you. Truth speaking was a stratagem. It's a trick in that place. Ambush lurked in a smile. A friendly smile may be hiding some attack, preparing for an attack. Peril made safety its cover. It hides behind the offer, the promise of safety is danger. Peril made safety its cover, trust its entry's gate. So if somebody makes you trust him, but he's only going to deceive you and let you down. Falsehood came laughing, friendly, with the eyes of truth. Each friend might turn out to be an enemy or a spy. Somebody offers you a friendly handshake, but that hand might, in its sleeve, it might have a dagger to attack you. An embrace, somebody comes and embraces you, he holds you tight. It's the iron cage of doom. In that realm, agony and danger stalked their trembling prey, like a tiger stalks his prey. No? And they speak softly, reassuringly, as to a timid friend. But then suddenly attack sprang, suddenly vehement with great force, unseen. So at every turn, fear leaped upon the heart. So much fear at every corner. Fear leaped out and cried out with an anguished, dreadful voice. That fear called for somebody to save, but nobody comes near. Everybody's walking very warily, very carefully, because death was always close. And yet it seemed a waste of time to be careful. Yet caution, carefulness seemed to be a vain expense of care, just a waste of energy, because everything that seems to offer some protection proves, in fact, to be a deadly net, a trap. And when, after long suspense, salvation does come, brought a glad relief, so that you relax, you disarm your strength, that salvation just serves as a smiling passage to worse fate, even more dreadful things. 𝒍𝒊𝒅𝒂𝒈𝒆.
There was no truce and no safe place to rest. One dared not slumber or put off one's arms. It was a world of battle and surprise. All who were there lived for themselves alone. All warred against all, but with a common head, turned out the mind that sought some higher good. Truth was exiled, lest she should dare to speak and heart the heart of darkness and light, or bring her pride of knowledge to blasphemy, the settled anarchy of established things.
Yes. A truce is when the armies stop fighting for a while. No? But there was no truce, and there was no safe place to rest. One couldn't fall asleep. One couldn't take off one's weapons. It was a world of battle and surprise. At any moment, your enemy may overtake you. So all who were there had to live for themselves alone. There's no thought of generosity or sympathy or anything like that. All were at war with all the others. But they would all join together with a common hate. They would all turn to attack the mind that is looking for some higher good, for some higher state. From that world, truth is exiled. She's sent away. She cannot stay there, because she might dare to speak truth words, and that would hurt the heart of darkness with her light. They are afraid that she will bring her pride of knowledge, of truth knowledge, to blaspheme, to contradict the settled anarchy of established things, the way things are in that realm, a state of settled no rule or misrule. So we'll stop there for today. We still have quite a way to go. Thanks to Sri Aurobindo for showing us this dark, unseen, hidden aspects of life, which also work on us and on our world. As from a womb obscure he saw emerge the body and visage of a dark unseen, hidden behind the fair outsides of life. Its dangerous commerce is our suffering's cause. Its breath is a subtle poison in men's hearts. All evil starts from that ambiguous face. A peril haunted now the common air. The world grew full of menacing energies, and wherever turned for help or hope his eyes, in field and house, in street and camp and mart, he met the prowl and stealthy come and go of armed, disquieting, bodied influences. A march of goddess figures, dark and nude, alarmed the air with grandiose unease. Appalling footsteps drew invisibly near. Shapes that were threats invaded the dream light, and ominous beings passed him on the road, whose very gaze was a calamity. A charm and sweetness, sudden and formidable, faces that raised alluring lips and eyes, approached him armed with beauty like a snare, but hid a fatal meaning in each line, and could in a moment dangerously change. But he alone discerned that screened attack. A veil upon the inner vision lay. A force was there that hid its dreadful steps. All was belied, yet thought itself the truth. All were beset, but knew not of the siege, for none could see the authors of their fall. Aware of some dark wisdom still withheld, that was the seal and warrant of this strength, he followed the track of dim, tremendous steps, returning to the night from which they came. A tract he reached, unbuilt and owned by none. There all could enter, but none stay for long. It was a no man's land of evil air, a crowded neighborhood without one home, a borderland between the world and hell. There unreality was nature's lord. It was a space where nothing could be true, for nothing was what it had claimed to be. A high appearance wrapped a specious void. Yet nothing would confess its own pretense, even to itself, in the ambiguous heart. A vast deception was the law of things. Only by that deception they could live. An unsubstantial nihil guaranteed the falsehood of the forms this nature took, and made them seem a while to be and live. A borrowed magic drew them from the void. They took a shape and stuff that was not theirs, and showed a colour that they could not keep, mirrors to a phantasm of reality. Each rainbow brilliance was a splendid lie, a beauty unreal graced a glamour face. Nothing could be relied on to remain. Joy nurtured tears, and good and evil proved. But never out of evil one plucked good. Love ended early in hate, delight killed with pain. Truth into falsity grew, and death ruled life. A power that laughed at the mischiefs of the world, an irony that joined the world's contraries and flung them into each other's arms to strive, put a sardonic rictus on God's face. Aloof, its influence entered everywhere, and left a cloven hoof mark on the breast. A twisted heart and a strange, sombre smile mocked at the sinister comedy of life. Announcing the advent of a perilous form, an ominous tread softened its dire footfall, that none might understand or be on guard. None heard until a dreadful grasp was close. Or else all augured a divine approach, an air of prophecy felt, a heavenly hope, listened for a gospel, watched for a new star. The fiend was visible, but cloaked in light. He seemed a helping angel from the skies. He armed untruth with scripture and the law. He deceived with wisdom, with virtue slew the soul, and led to perdition by the heavenward path. A lavish sense he gave of power and joy, and when arose the warning from within, he reassured the ear with dulcet tones, or took the mind captive in its own net. His rigorous logic made the false seem true. Amazing the elect with holy law, he spoke as with the very voice of God. The air was full of treachery and ruse. Truth-speaking was a stratagem in that place. Ambush lurked in a smile, and peril made safety its cover, trust its entry's gate. Falsehood came laughing with the eyes of truth. Each friend might turn an enemy or spy. The hand one clasped ensleeved a dagger's stab, and an embrace could be doom's iron cage. Agony and danger stalked their trembling prey, and softly spoke as to a timid friend. Attack sprang suddenly vehement and unseen. Fear leaped upon the heart at every turn, and cried out with an anguished, dreadful voice. It called for one to save, but none came near. All warily walked, for death was ever close. Yet caution seemed a vain expense of care, for all that guarded proved a deadly net. And when, after long suspense, salvation came and brought a glad relief, disarming strength, it served as a smiling passage to worse fate. There was no truce, and no safe place to rest. One dared not slumber or put off one's arms. It was a world of battle and surprise. All who were there lived for themselves alone. All warred against all, but with a common hate turned on the mind that sought some higher good. Truth was exiled, lest she should dare to speak, and hurt the heart of darkness with her light, or bring her pride of knowledge to blaspheme the settled anarchy of established things.